David had always been an observant man. Living alone in his modest house in the quiet suburb of Maplewood, he found solace in the routine of his days. His job as a freelance graphic designer allowed him the luxury of working from home, giving him ample time to indulge in his favorite pastime, people watching. From his kitchen window, David could see into the backyard of his reclusive neighbor, Mr. Thompson. The old man was an enigma to the neighborhood. He never left his house, never had visitors, and the only signs of life were the occasional flicker of lights and the odd noises that seemed to emanate from within. Most of the neighbors wrote Mr. Thompson off as an eccentric hermit, but David was not so easily convinced. It started with the noises, strange rhythmic sounds, almost like chanting, would drift through the night air. David's curiosity grew into a gnawing suspicion when he noticed the odd smells, acrid, metallic scents that seemed out of place in their otherwise peaceful neighborhood. His imagination ran wild with possibilities, but it wasn't until one fateful night that his suspicions took a darker turn. It was well past midnight when David saw it. Mr. Thompson, usually so reclusive, was outside in his backyard, digging under the cover of darkness. The old man worked with an eerie intensity, his movements almost mechanical. David's heart raced as he watched from his window, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. Was it simply a harmless gardening project, or was there something more sinister at play? Unable to shake off the feeling of unease, David decided to investigate further. He waited for days, watching Mr. Thompson's house like a hawk, hoping to catch him leaving. Finally, his patience was rewarded. Late one evening, Mr. Thompson emerged, locking his door behind him before disappearing down the street. David seized the opportunity. With his heart pounding, David crept across his yard and into Mr. Thompson's. He tried the back door, finding it locked, but a window on the side was slightly ajar. He pushed it open and slipped inside, his breath hitching as he entered the dimly lit house. The interior was as unsettling as the exterior. Dark, heavy drapes covered the windows, and the air was thick with the same acrid smell he had noticed before. David moved cautiously, his eyes scanning the room for any signs of what Mr. Thompson might be hiding. His gaze fell upon a bookshelf filled with old, dusty tomes. Many were written in languages he couldn't understand, but the titles that he could decipher sent chills down his spine. Necromancy for the novice, summoning the ancient one's rituals of the damned. David's unease grew as he ventured deeper into the house. In the living room, he found strange symbols etched into the floor, their meanings unknown but undeniably ominous. His pulse quickened as he spotted a door at the end of the hallway, slightly ajar with a faint light emanating from within. He approached it slowly, feeling a cold sweat break out on his forehead. Pushing the door open, David descended a narrow staircase into a hidden basement. The sight that greeted him was beyond anything he could have imagined. The room was filled with cages, each one containing old medical equipment, rusty scalpels, syringes, and vials filled with unknown substances. Photographs lined the walls, each one depicting a different child. David's stomach churned as he recognized some of the faces. They were the missing children from their town, their disappearances still unsolved. David's mind raced as he tried to piece together what he was seeing. Mr. Thompson, his reclusive neighbor, was somehow connected to these disappearances, but why? What was he doing with these children? His thoughts were interrupted by the sound of footsteps above. Panic surged through him as he realized Mr. Thompson had returned. With no time to waste, David scrambled for a hiding place. He squeezed himself behind a large cabinet, his breath shallow as he listened to the old man's movements. Mr. Thompson's voice echoed through the basement, chanting in that same eerie, rhythmic manner David had heard before. He peeked out from his hiding spot, his eyes widening in horror as he saw Mr. Thompson standing before an altar, a large, ancient book in his hands. The old man's chant grew louder, more fervent, and the symbols on the floor began to glow with an unnatural light. David's fear was replaced by a sense of urgency. Whatever ritual Mr. Thompson was performing, it had to be stopped. Summoning all his courage, David burst from his hiding place and lunged at Mr. Thompson. The two men grappled, their struggle sending the ancient book flying from Mr. Thompson's hands. It landed on the floor with a thud, its pages splayed open to a particularly gruesome illustration. Mr. Thompson's eyes blazed with fury as he fought to regain control, but David's determination was stronger. With a final desperate shove, he knocked the old man to the ground. Breathing heavily, David grabbed the book and scanned its pages, trying to understand the ritual. It spoke of an ancient cult, one that sought to summon a malevolent entity by sacrificing innocent lives. The missing children were to be the offerings, their souls bound to the dark ritual. David's hands trembled as he realized the gravity of the situation. He had to stop the ritual, save the children, and put an end to Mr. Thompson's twisted plans, but how? The symbols, the chanting there had to be a way to reverse it. In a moment of clarity, David remembered the strange symbols etched into the floor upstairs. They matched the ones in the book, and he realized they were the key to stopping the ritual. He raced back up the stairs, Mr. Thompson's enraged shouts echoing behind him. In the living room, David quickly began to deface the symbols, disrupting their intricate patterns. Mr. Thompson appeared at the top of the stairs, his face contorted with rage. He lunged at David, but the younger man was ready. Using the book as a weapon, he struck Mr. Thompson, sending him crashing to the floor. With a final, desperate effort, David obliterated the last of the symbols. The room was filled with a blinding light, and a deafening roar seemed to shake the very foundations of the house. When the light finally faded, the basement was silent, the ritual broken. David stood over Mr. Thompson, who lay motionless on the floor. The old man's reign of terror was over. He quickly called the police, his hands still shaking as he explained everything that had happened. When they arrived, they found the evidence overwhelming. Mr. Thompson was arrested, and the children, traumatized but alive, were reunited with their families. In the days that followed, David struggled to come to terms with what he had uncovered. The once quiet suburb of Maplewood was now a hive of activity, the media swarming to cover the shocking story. David was hailed as a hero, but the events had left a deep scar on his soul. As he sat in his kitchen, looking out at the now empty house next door, David couldn't shake the feeling that the darkness he had faced was only a part of a larger, more sinister world. The symbols, the rituals, the ancient cult, they all hinted at forces beyond his understanding. But for now, the neighborhood was safe. The children were home, and Mr. Thompson was behind bars. David took a deep breath, hoping that the nightmares would eventually fade. He had uncovered the dark secrets of his reclusive neighbor and stopped a malevolent force from being unleashed upon the world, but in doing so, he had opened his eyes to the shadows that lurked just beyond the edges of their reality, forever altering his perception of the world around him.